Welcome. Jakub was showing in the previous presentation how to write a scalable application, and I will show you how to get it to the users in the end. My name is Pavel Studeny, and I'm engineering manager in Outreach. Thanks for staying this long here. So in Outreach, we used to have an old web application for about 6 years. And in the end, we felt the need to move to a new one. I will describe why as well. And this is the talk about the transition, how to switch such a thing. It's here it is. So on the agenda, first of all, we will talk about the reasons why you may want to migrate to a new application or why you may decide not to and stay with whatever you have. We will talk about some technical basis that would allow the migration, then how to migrate successfully, and then also how to measure and evaluate the result. If you have any questions, feel free to ask right away, but there also is a longer questions booked at the end of the presentation. So, with the old application, initially when Outreach started in 2014, it had just a few developers. So it was kind of easy. Everybody knew what the others are doing. And we did have even back then 3 different products. It was the web app, the extension, and Outlook add-in. And these products had similar features. One issue with that was that if you wanted to implement a feature, you had to write it 3 times in each of the products separately. It wasn't such a big deal, but then with the growth, there was more and more developers coming, and not everybody knew what's in that part of the code and similar. And also, it started to become a little bit obsolete. We didn't have all the monitoring and telemetry that we wanted to have and similar. So in the end, we decided to move on to something that would scale better to the growing number of developers. So we switched from JavaScript to TypeScript as one example. Another thing was that we switched to a modern React with the hooks that weren't available back then. We are using a modern component library, and we have much better telemetry. We can see what our users are doing, what they might be struggling with. And I believe, at least, that we have a better stability of the product than before. One big question was whether we take the existing application and try to refactor it gradually, or whether we just throw it away and start from scratch. We have done quite some experiments and attempts to refactor it, and because of multiple reasons, one of them was the skill set, and others, it was kind of too much spaghetti code to refactor. So in the end, we decided to start from scratch. So there we were with the old application and working on the new one. And we somehow needed to combine these. Just to, right. So, just to give you an idea, it wasn't a 2 weeks effort or 2 months. It actually took us over 2 years of effort. So what we wanted to avoid was some kind of big bang that we would write something for 2 years without showing it to anybody, and then suddenly we would release it to the users and it wouldn't work, or something would be broken, right? So it isn't agile at all, after all. So we really wanted what we are writing to show it to the users as soon as possible. So we decided not to do a big bang, staying with the old web app and suddenly switch it to the new one. We wanted to gradually, as we are writing the new components, to show them right away. And how can we do that? In some cases, you could go page by page. This is actually an approach that we took on the extension. But we have a single page application, so there is a single page, right? That's what the SPA is for. And so we could not go page by page, actually. So then, by the way, has anybody heard about micro frontends here? Is anybody familiar? Wow, quite a few. So what it is, it's basically combining a single web application from multiple independent builds. This is exactly what we want to achieve. We have a build of the new web app, and we have a build of the old web app, and we kind of want to combine them together. For that, if you read about micro frontends or if you work with them, normally you could use web components, which is a browser technology, fairly new, well, not that new anymore. And this is fairly suitable, I would say, if you plan for such a micro frontends application upfront, and if the web app anyway is kind of coherent, uses the same component library, the same CSS and whatnot. But in here, in our case, it was a completely different technology, different CSS, and it would be kind of difficult to mix it in the same page. So we decided for iframes that provide a very good isolation, and it worked pretty well, actually. This is how it looks. So you can see on the left, on the top, this is the web app, and this in the middle is the new iframe. It's we could display the iframe anywhere. In this case, it's the main content, but it could really be anywhere. You can notice that it has a different domain. The top level app has one domain. The iframe over here has a different domain. I will talk more about that later. And of course, as you navigate over the menu, in some cases you want to show the new web app, so the iframe would be there. Then I could navigate to, I don't know, calls over here. And maybe that part is not finished yet, so I will keep showing the old version of the app there. I was talking about the domains. One thing was that the old web app uses different subdomains. And we wanted to get rid of that and use a single domain anyway. So then it was kind of natural choice to go for a different domain for the new web app, for the iframes. In addition, it has some advantages. There are some disadvantages. The pages have worse access to each other because of the browser security rules. But on the other hand, it allows us to tweak the security settings independently. We want to change some, I don't know, X-frame options or whatever. We can do it independently in the new web app and in the old one. And how it works when you have such an iframe in the web app. First of all, if you want to display the iframe, the first thing that you do, you set up a listener for messages from the iframe. This is the very first thing that you need to start with. Then, as a second, you create the iframe in the page, load it, and when the iframe is loaded, it will let you know, it will send you a message via post message, for example, that the iframe is ready. And then, using, again, post message exchange between the top level document and the iframe, you can pass on some additional data, like the route, where to navigate, and who is the current user, authentication, whatnot. And the iframe will render whatever you tell it to do. And it may pass you back some data based on what the user is doing. He might click some navigation or that you want to drive on the top, right? So it would send you the data back. And in the end, if you are navigating away, you are closing the iframe from the top level document, and it's gone. And you can create a new one if you want, if you navigate somewhere where you want an iframe again. One thing to the authentication. It might happen that the user keeps working with the application, and in the end the login session expires, and you don't really want the iframes over here to prompt you to log in. So the authentication, whether you are using cookies or some kind of tokens or whatever, it needs to be driven from the top of the document. You pass the authentication to the iframes instead of the iframes driving that themselves. Not a big deal, just to keep that in mind. So, with this we have covered, I would say, the basic building blocks for the combination of the old and new web app, or basically different web apps. And now, let's say that you have users still on the old web app, and you have already developers that would like to try whether it's already working for them before they show it to the users, right? When the developers are done developing, you want to test it. Maybe you have some volunteers who would like to try it first. And then you either right away or more likely gradually, by percent, you enable it for everybody. And how it works? Ideally, in the code, if you know React a little bit, this might look familiar. You want to do something like that. You have some kind of HTML. You have a condition whether to show the old content or the new one. If the condition says show the new dashboard, you show the iframe. If the condition says stay with the old dashboard, you show the old dashboard. And where does the condition come from? This is what Jakub has already mentioned. Ideally, you would use feature flags. So you could have in-house solution. In Outreach, we use launch directly, for example. How it works, you have some backend somewhere at launch directly, and we send them a request saying who the current user is, what is his company, what is the product that he's using, and the backend will evaluate it and send him a set of feature flag, or just one, depends how you ask. And that you put into the condition, this one, and based on that, you can toggle between the old and new experiences without any change to the code. You can toggle it from the backend right away. If, for example, you roll it out, you find out there is some issue with that, it starts crashing or anything that you have not caught during testing, you can right away disable the feature flag, and on the next user attempt, they will see back the old experience, and you have enough time to fix it. This kind of leads me to monitoring as well, because you want to make sure that if you are writing new web app, it should work better, right? Why would it work worse? That's not the reason to write it. So first of all, at the initial stages in particular, you want to catch errors and crashes. But then also, it should ideally work faster than the old web app. It should drive more engagement. You are writing the features for the users to use them, so you would like to see that they are clicking and using the features. So you can both compare the performance and see that the new web app is faster, or you can compare the clicks with the new one on, I don't know, tasks or calendar or whatever. You can compare that the users, for example, are clicking more often in the new web app than in the old one. Or you can measure the overall time from starting some of the job that the user needs to do until it's finished. And you can measure that the user is doing that actually faster or smoother. This is what Jakub was mentioning, the telemetry tools like Datadog, and actually we will have much more details about this in the next session. So So what is the last step? You have everything migrated, everything is shown in the iframes, and the old web app remains basically an empty skeleton. So the last step is to migrate the users from this to this. No change, nothing. The users will not see any single change. You are just throwing away the old skeleton and start with the new web app. So in here, you can see, of course, the skeleton showing the iframes. In here, there is no more iframes. It's the brand new web app. And you can archive your old repository. So something that we have learned when doing this, there were a few things that went extremely well, I would say. The architecture, for example, that we set up front did not need any major rewrites or anything. It mostly works. There were some issues, but the basic ideas how to do that, they were pretty solid. The iframes, the messaging, and these things around. The routing was a little bit difficult, how to do the routing in the iframes versus the routing in the top-level application. And I would say, what is the best scope for the iframes? You can do this little iframe doing something here and little iframe there. It kind of was too slow or too weird to display all of these. In the end, we settled with a single iframe showing something or no iframe, but not like 10 iframes doing things. And where we a little bit failed, I would say, was that we weren't measuring the performance upfront enough. There is always so many things to do. And then the users started to complain that this is slow, so we needed to spend extra time on improving the performance. And also, one thing that might be really tempting, you know that in the old web app, there's something weird, like the users don't really understand it. It's difficult for them to move from one screen to another. And you know how to fix it, and you are writing the new code, so why would you not fix it right away? But don't. The thing is that you roll it out, and you are getting some user feedback, and the user is saying, hey, where is my feature? I don't see it. And then you don't know. Is it because the user cannot find it? Because you move it somewhere else? Or is it because it's broken and it is not there? So ideally, try to migrate one-to-one whatever you have, so that there is always one step at a time. And once you are migrated, once you have the new experience, then you can try to improve it. This is, I guess, one of the biggest learnings here. So we did it. In a summary, iframes are the best because we use them. That was a joke. Then messaging, of course, are my must-have if you want to communicate. Post message is your friend here. It's safe enough, and you can enable gradually, and by having a telemetry sending info what the user is doing, you can make sure that what you have written is actually better than what you had before. In the end, I believe that most of our users are happier. And now, any questions, anybody? Yes?
So you were using the feature flags. Why didn't you just create a different component instead of the iframe?
So the question is why instead of using feature flag we did not have a different component?
You used the feature flag, but instead of rendering the iframe with your new application, why didn't you just create a new component that you would be rendering?
Right, because these were not compatible really. So as the old application used some kind of component library, and the new application uses the new component library, right? So it's difficult to combine these on a single page. There would be too many conflicts. Yes?
Why didn't you use the web technologies like Shadow DOM and all that to create the isolation for the web components that are on a different stack? Because it's possible to do that.
We are using Shadow DOM in some cases. Could we use that here? It's.
But I don't remember. I can find out for you offline.
It's also a question how. Yeah. It's also a question how you build it, right? If if the builds are independent because they use different rules, for example, for TypeScript and whatnot. You want to have independent builds anyway, so then you will need to combine it on by, like, I don't know, creating some artifacts and consume them. So in the end, we did feel that the iframes provide a much better solution. Yes?
Are you still using iframes, or you like completed and to move like on that slide that you iframes out and move to new application?
So when on the new web app, it doesn't use iframes anymore, correct? So the iframes approach was meant for the transition, basically.
So now you are not using it.
Well, right now, we still have not migrated all of the users. So some of the users are still on the old web app with the iframes, but the users that we have migrated fully don't have the iframes.
And it's 2 years?
Yeah, even a little bit more, I would say.
And new UIs appear, and you will continue to use iframes forever?
So, if I understand the question, you would push for keeping the iframes, right?
No, I mean, like, it's long-time transition, and during this time, it can be that your designers will provide newer UX.
Yeah.
And you will create new iframe. Like, you're like close to finish, you want to remove all iframes, but then you are coming and you again and again.
I see it's all feature additions actually.
Yeah.
But it's orthogonal to iframes, right? Iframes is just a wrapper. Like independently on that, if you have new feature requests, you can update the UX within the iframe. So that exactly happened. We didn't want to migrate. We want to migrate one-to-one, but in the reality, it didn't happen. Like often, like product or design team will come and tell you like you need to tweak this or that. So yeah, we were even implementing some new features actually.
So this is basically the same question as the first one, where the old web app and the new one were not compatible enough, so we could not combine them. But if there is a new feature, but the web app is coherent, we can build it together and just use the feature flag and have all the components and switch them. This is fine then. Yes?
So I don't have too much experience as a developer, and I have all time the interesting question for me. Like as Instagram, this is and they have a web application and a mobile application. So I noticed that some users have another UI experience, UI features than other users. So how does it work exactly that some users have new features, new iframes, and other stuff? Like how users are chosen to get a new iframe or new UI features?
Yeah, so the question was, how is it possible that some users have old features or different features than the other ones?
Yeah, exactly.
This is one of the part of the transition here, and also it could be in case of A/B testing, for example. Amazon, for example, uses A/B testing so heavily. They are running hundreds of A/B tests in the same time. And the basic thing for a web app is that you don't have a static HTML that would just go to the user and, like in the old days of the web, where there was in JavaScript there was alert and there was about it. So today the web page is fairly small. The static HTML, it's, I don't know, it could be one element in the page, and that's it. And the rest you build programmatically in the runtime. So as you are building the web page, by the program logic, you decide what kind of elements to put into the web page and which not to put. And this can be by the program conditions that you get, for example, from the feature flags. Does it answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
There was a question here, I think.
Okay. Do you think, if you were again in the position of moving to new feature set, do you think that new React feature create route will be the path that you can create multiple routes for React applications?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
Oh, okay. React 18 has a feature create route, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can bind your React application to, you can have multiple routes there.
Yeah.
Do you think this could be a path next time if you will be again migrating to something new?
If we again migrated to something new, if we used React 18 routes, well, possibly. I can't really tell, actually. To be honest, like we may decide in 10 years that we would migrate to a new web app. Not now, I would say. So when we evaluate next time, we will see.
But it was not possible before, because like we have at least different component frameworks and so on. How you will combine it without like CSS pollution and so on. So like iframe will give you sandboxing from CSS point of view or web components, but for some reason we selected iframes. Pavel, what was interesting is that how we cache the iframes for the performance reasons. You were talking there about disposing or creating iframes, but there was actually interesting logic to improve the performance to cache the iframes for user experience when you are navigating from one page to another.
This is correct, and you actually don't need to remove the iframe from the DOM if you don't want to spend time loading it again. So you can just hide it, keep it there in the DOM, hidden, and then when you want to display it again, possibly with some new contents, you just bring it up and send it a message to display the new content and discard the old one.